And hello, we're
Cool.
back.
So two things have occurred to me during the break. One is that a nice thing we were talking about how constraints help when you're pitching, and
Yeah.
a nice thing about having come from having played a game, and kind of finished a little mini campaign that we had is that I threw away a lot of science fiction ideas because I was like, yeah, we just did that. Like I was just there,
Hmm.
and so that helped. Like having a bit of a game history helped because I didn't want to retread old ground. uh, that helped. Also, the second thing is that it's really weird you should mention Jameis in Dune because I got Johnny picked me up from work the other day and she said, "How did your day go?" And I was like, "Oh, it was pretty good. I was productive." And I wrote like the first four lines of a song of Jane Says, but it's about Jameis. And that's a really hard song to Weird Al Yankovic because it's
Hmm.
just so uneven and untraditional. But yeah, Jameis, that Fremen is my friend. He challenged me to Amtal. He is the one in my vision. That's okay. I will kill him anyway. Jameis. Anyway, that's my
I
Jameis.
love that, Judd. Thank you for
It's pretty
sharing
good. It's
your
pretty good.
song
I
with
want I
me.
want Weird Al to just take the rest of it and finish it because
Yeah.
I do not have the musical skill to do it, and I clearly don't have the singing skill,
I
as
think you should
I
just.
just said. So yeah, Paul Paul composed it in honor of Duncan, Idaho. Totally, totally. I my latest threadless shop T-shirt is friend of Jameis, and I just got the shirt in the mail, and I'm super psyched.
Nice, nice. I'm gonna go.
It came out really well.
Will you link that your Threadless shop?
Yeah, I'll grab that right
Um,
now.
I can probably just do the Judd thing. Uh, I think this is the all of my link, all your links thing. If folks are um, if folks are looking for Judd's very cool stuff, very cool shop.
Yeah,
Um,
shop of judd.threadless.com, and uh, yeah, it I'm really happy with that shirt. And it was a part of the book that I really loved when I reread it recently, and I think I've always loved it, but rereading it recently, that one stood out as a part that I was like, oh, that's really cool. That was a really cool cultural sci-fi moment where he's like, oh, I don't know if I should come forward and say I'm his friend. Uh, it was nice. It felt real, and that was nice. Cool. Shall we get back to pitching?
yeah, just saying, friends.
Here we
Check
go.
out this noise.
So good.
Might
I'm so
have to
happy with that
just.
one. Yeah, the font is literally called Arrakis. It's by someone called
That's so.
H47. So I was not being subtle there. I bought it like a year ago, and I was just like, I'm going to sit on it until I eventually
Love it.
find the right thing to do with it. So
All right.
there it is, friend of Jameis. Cool. Let's do it. So the next one is Ghost in the Dark. I think playing one GM, one player in Deskball is difficult. That
Mm-hmm.
is not what uh,
Blades is meant to be a team-based game,
not what
right?
Blades is meant to be. So we would have to hack it. We'd have to hack it pretty regularly. I think it would be the play cycle would be like looking for blood or looking for something that keeps you from going totally feral. And then downtime would be like revisiting old places where you were in life. Your turf sheet would be like different places you haunt and different anchors that keep you uh, again from going totally feral. Entanglements, whispers, you know, every 2-bit street whisper trying to like put you in a bottle,
Yeah.
other ghosts, and then heaven forbid the spirit wardens.
Right. Right. The big
Um,
guns.
the problem with this one is that it's a lot of pressure because we would have to be designing in public, literally, and
Right.
you had a hand in that game, and uh, I don't know if that's something we want. Like, I feel like designing around World of Dungeons, which is just made to be hacked that way, is one thing, but Blades in the Dark is so dense that as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you pull out one cog, you've got to really do the whole machine.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
And
that is the experience that I think I as a publisher who get pitched game Forge and Art games frequently find is that folks see the SRD and think, cool, that's my starting point. And
right,
the danger there is that is, even though this SRD doesn't have the setting in it, it is still has so many, there's so many things that are already assumed about it that if you just build on top of that, it's very, very difficult to execute your idea without it being overshadowed by blades. And then when you start just like, oh, I'm going to tweak this and tweak that and tweak the other, without really stripping it down to the studs, it's very easy to have a very big looking game. It's 200 pages because you had 150 pages out of the SRD,
right,
but a game that isn't really executing the things that you want it to do because it's still got so much of blades in it and you have to do a lot to tear it down. That
yeah,
said, I think we'd still be playing Blades in the Dark. I don't think we'd have to be designing what's it look like. I
right,
mean, we'd use the Ghost playbook. We'd use the action system. We use action rolls, fortune rolls.
yeah,
But yes, we would have to figure out some alternative downtime actions. We'd have to figure out what a crew sheet, if anything, like what kind of crew. Since the crew is one,
yeah,
what does that look like?
yeah. And I think it could be a really interesting meditation on loneliness, and
Yeah,
being alone in a city, and how profoundly alone being alone in a city is. And uh,
I had
I
a
yeah.
no.
Go.
Keep going. I don't want to
No,
interrupt
that's
you.
it. I lived in Japan for a year, and it I had friends, but sometimes it could just be rough, like being surrounded by people, uh, and not having your people around is tough.
Yeah.
So being a ghost and like being surrounded by your people, but them not being able to see you, or you not wanting to show yourself to them because you might, damage them or something, I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was recently in Paris for a very short amount of time. I was there for a day and a half because my sister was getting married, and I basically popped in and popped out.
Nice.
And it was lovely. She was getting married in Strasbourg, and I flew in, went to the wedding, and then the next day I went, which is Strasbourg. It's about a 2 hour train ride back to Paris. The next day I went to Paris and spent a day and a half there, and then flew back home. It was a real short trip. I would wish I could have taken longer, but I've wanted to go to Paris forever because I just really just wanted to like be in the city of lights, be eat all the amazing food, see it all, and I was delighted. And I was there on my own, and I was trying to do it all on the cheap, which is tough. And so I was staying at the cheapest place I could find, and I got some plane tickets that made me bounce through Mexico to get there, which were cheaper than other tickets, but it meant the flight was really long and and anywho, all this to say, I absolutely loved being there, but I was pretty exhausted during a lot of it,
Yeah.
and it was raining most of the time I was there, pretty hard.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so I was walking on an umbrella, and I loved taking in the city. I just ate at so many places. I had this huge checklist of like foods I want to eat. I ate them all, and then many more. And I didn't go to any like fancy places. I just went to like wherever I was hungry, and I'd stop into a place. And I walked like 13 miles one day and 10 the next. It was just tromping all over uh, the city. But end of the day, I did feel profoundly alone.
Yeah.
It was even as beautiful as it was. It felt like maybe if I was with somebody, it would have been different, or maybe if I spoke French, or maybe if I was there longer. But I definitely felt, I was a tourist, and that's fine. But there's a certain amount of like, I guess I'm going to go back home to my hotel. Like at the end of the night, like I'm going to go back to my hotel room and by myself and like check my emails and go to bed.
Yep.
And yeah, and I loved it. I'm glad I went. I would definitely go again, but I don't have the same sense of like, oh, it's just going to be totally magical that I did before I went.
Right.
You know. So anyhow, that feeling of being alone and alone by necessity, right? Like alone because you're kind of terrified of what happens if you're not.
Yeah.
If somebody finds you, um, I think is great. And I love Dustfall. I love uh, the factions and the characters and the situation. Um, I want to look at the ghost's needs, and I'm pulling it up in the book right now.
Do it to it.
214 in
Good.
214 in the PDF. Um, the ghosts have a need. Life essence. No, but there's something else that they want. Instead of
Okay.
trauma, they have gloom. That might be what I'm thinking. Let me
Mm.
look at it. What is it? I'm trying to think of like what is the sort of damage that a ghost has.
Oh shit, that's funny. I gotta put it up. Good. I was worried we wouldn't get any reading from a rule book tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh shit,
Oh,
that is
well,
funny.
well. Let's play nice. Stop share.
Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness.
you're on a show with Judd and Sean if we're reading from a book.
Yeah.
Um, a disembodied spirit craving vengeance. Rogue spirit is a scourge upon Duskwall, hunted by spirit wardens and sought out as a servant by whispers and cultists. But your righteous vengeance burns so bright and pure, you must not allow yourself to be thwarted by anyone. When you play a ghost, you earn XP when you exact vengeance on those who you deem deserving, when you express your outrage or anger, and when you settle scores from your heritage or background. That's the most important part
Right.
for me. Like mechanics and all aside, that is uh, that I wanted to reread that text because I wanted to make sure we were not signing up for playing a character that is fundamentally trying to serve a toxic need, right? Like fundamentally
Interesting.
trying to serve or maybe a better way to put it, trying to serve a desire and only having a toxic means of serving that desire, right? Like because
That's
um,
interesting. Yeah.
Whitney Beltran, in an interview with Ross Kalman during Big Bad Online, which is available on Big Bad's YouTube channel, was talking about motivations of heroes and villains, antagonists and protagonists, not necessarily of good and evil, just of how you cast characters in narrative design. And she said everybody has a need that they have to have satisfied. It's usually a loss. It's usually something that they are missing, so they feel needs to be restored. And the way they try to satisfy that need uh, is really what kind of makes them a hero or a villain. And so she says,
Mm.
like, the example of somebody whose like parents left them for any reason. Their parents died, they, or the all too like sad version just left, one or both of them just bounced in the character has these feelings of abandonment. And the one perhaps healthy response, a healthy response is like trying to learn to trust somebody to be close to you again, knowing that it could hurt you. And the other toxic response is never letting yourself being hurt again by anybody by cutting off all like access to your emotional context and like making sure that no one's ever able to hurt you again because you don't want to be hurt another time. And this is her example that I'm stealing from, but I thought it was really, really good one. And so I'm trying to think like, are there? I'm not saying I don't want to have a character who doesn't ever do toxic things. Like I think
Right.
we can
Right.
play with
But
that.
but
But like,
but but you don't want
is
to
there
be. You
room?
don't want to. You don't. Yeah. 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 But it's one thing to be like, I have a character, they do some toxic things. It's another thing to be like, I have a character, in order to play them, I have to do a toxic thing. Otherwise the game will end. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's, yeah, yeah,
Right.
I get it. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. It's a smart look that I wouldn't have thought of. I would not have thought of that.
So I'm looking
Interesting.
at this and I go, vengeance on those who you deem deserving. I can see a lot of people like that in Dustfall that I would feel
Right.
really good about. Like, there's
Yeah.
plenty of people that I could like. Me, Sean, would be like, yeah, I could have a
Oh yeah.
ghost that
Totally.
feels like those people deserve it. When you express outrage or anger, I'm cool with that. And when you settle scores from your heritage or background, that feels like that's like the way to like try and reconnect. Is like I'm still part of this. I'm still part of wherever I came from. I'm still um, like this is still my family. This is still my people. Even if they don't know I'm still here. Even if
Yeah.
uh, they're terrified of me. Even if I'm inherently dangerous and caustic to them. Like they're still part of my life. So all let's say, fuck yeah, Judd Carlman. Why you do this to me? Why you make me choose between such absolutely delicious
Yeah. This one might be a little bit
ideas?
more. The other thing with this one is this one might be a little bit more work to get started.
Mm-hmm.
Because we might have to make up a sheet. It's kind of a new thing. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Luke's idea is to make a vendetta sheet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Luke's been dropping dimes all over this
yeah,
damn,
and I
all
think
over
I
this
think
chat.
something like that.
The Stickens quote is killing me. Love it. Anyway, I just wanted that on there. I wanted that documented so that I can go back and look at it when I watch the video.
Yes, you'll get to exactly 1 minute 25,
Yeah.
1 hour 25 minutes in the video, and then
Yeah. I'll almost there.
um yeah. So color me extremely interested,
Cool. And
and
again, like we don't have to. Number one, we don't have to make a decision tonight, and number two, we don't have to choose just one. Like it could be like, hey, let's do, let's do one for a while, and then let's like take a break and go to the other. It
mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be, uh, one decision to rule them all. Um, and my last, I feel like the last uh, slide, because there's only one slide left, is kind of the weakest, and I only brought it up because in your document you were like, "Yeah, I guess we could play D&D," and I was like, "Is Sean telling me he wants to play D&D? Is that what's happening here? Did that
Well,
just happen in
I
his
was
document?"
talking about the enjoyment of playing a game where the progression is built into it,
Right,
and so you
right,
can do the cool stuff. And I also mentioned blades in the same way, and I was like, I feel like I'm kind of ready for that granular amount, but I think the things I like about D&D are the like leveling up and getting new cool abilities and like the wealth
yeah,
of magic items and the cool different kinds of creatures that inhabit the world. And I think
yeah,
the things that I hate about D&D are like everything else. Like
right,
that's so untrue. The thing that really like smacks. I mean, there's so much that's problematic about like the general like dungeon delving premise. And I think we've already talked quite a bit
yeah,
about that. But even if we played in a game where we were doing stuff that we like felt really good about, which I 100% believe we could do, the combat in D&D, even though it's sometimes like some of the coolest parts, it takes so long. It's just so slow. And I
yeah,
loved fourth edition because it was like cool. It felt like in Final Fantasy where you're like running around, doing all this stuff, and then you get into combat. It's like zoom, we're playing a different game. You
yeah,
zoom in, and fourth edition, it was like cool. We're playing the tactical minis game with like really fun like tactical minis rules. And most other editions, I've just been like, oh god, an hour. And it's not like it's fast either. It's still slow, but the slow part is still really fun. It's like board gamey fun to
yep,
me.
yep.
Anyway, but yes, please
Yeah.
go on to next
So
slide.
you just reminded me that there's I'm running a Planescape game on Thursday, like a Planescape inspired game on Thursday nights, and so when the players get back from their missions, they are part of an Outlands expedition team, and when they come back from their missions, they the community they're in gathers and they tell them they talk about in in their little their neighborhood of Sigil. They say this is what we did, in kind of your name, because we are your expedition team for this neighbor, for the the clerk ward. And so the neighborhood elders kind of call them out on their shit, ask them questions and ask, I wanted that philosophical bent. And there's always someone at the beginning of all of these adventure forums that says, I would just like to point out for the record that outsiders going to an alien place to solve other people's problems is inherently problematic and imperialistic. And someone's like, you come to every forum and say that? And it's like, yes, I do. I just need it on the record. And
Yep. I
and we all
need you
kind
to
of
be
chuckle.
cognizant
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on that note is like the thing I could do for a one-on-one D&D game, which is a thing I've been working on called the Kranev Investigative Guild, which is like turning D&D, using D&D as an investigative game in Ravenloft. So like gothic fantasy crime, which is a lot of, I mean, someone could say that Blaze in the Dark is gothic fantasy crime too. We don't necessarily have to use 5e. We could do like Worlds Without Number or World of Dungeons, or like maybe even Sorcerer. It could possibly do it. I've got like the notes for like how to do it with 5e, but I kind of like that we don't play the mainstream games, and so I don't know. I'm up for passing on this. I wanted it in there because you mentioned D&D, and I was totally shocked, and so
Yeah,
I
I was kind of
wanted
shocked too when I said it. I was like,
I
yeah.
I wanted the option. I wanted to be like, if Sean wants to play D&D, I want that in there. A lot of dear friends of ours contributed to Ravenloft, so
Yeah.
it would be it would be cool to like traipse around and solve mysteries, and dig into that setting a little bit, walk through the mists, but there are other ideas here that I like better.
Yeah, but I do want to explore this a little more, even though I don't think we're going to pick it ultimately. There's some things that I want to dig into. This is I want to dig into. So, two things that I want to sort of dive into. One is just a little more in general, like what do you see as what is the investigative guilds like I'm envisioning this like you're a resident of Ravenloft, not someone who is pulled in by the mist. Like this is your home, and these are the people you care about, and the reality of vampires and werewolves and all that stuff is just like that's your reality. It's not a shock to you. That is what you have to deal with. So that's cool. Being part of Ravenloft rather than entering into the mists and being like, this place is evil and horrible, rather than being like, this place is our home.
Right.
Like, then the second part is like, how are we not a cop? And I feel like I don't want to brush the cop. I don't want to use the cop brush too broadly. I don't want to say like people who investigate crimes are inherently cops, but I do want to make sure, because I think like when something goes wrong, there needs to be a response. And I think our modern policing system is terrible. And I think our modern policing system isn't about solving crimes. It's about keeping the haves from the have-nots. And being a bulwark against, social change.
I think Ravenloft makes it super easy to show that. I mean, there's literally a secret police in Darkon called the Karget, and they are literally vampires. Like it's not subtle. Killing Eve, but in Ravenloft. Oh, Luke, you're killing it today. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the investigative guild. I have a Word document. Here's what it says in the first sentence. I have no memory of writing this because I never have much of a memory of writing anything. The Kranev Investigative Guild, started by Madame Celia Kranev, has offices of some type in almost every domain in Ravenloft. And so I picture it as the old lady investigator, paying homage to kind of Agatha Christie, thinking about Brindlewood Bay by Jason Cordova, and The Between by him, but a little different. And like so each chapter house would be a little bit different. Like some of them will be these thriving places where people are trying to find justice, and some of them would be like a closet with a ghost in it, and some uh, paper cabinets for old cases. So I like that we could change it up, the vibe of the game based on which domain we were in and what the case was, and where the investigation led us. Uh, I, I like that. Uh, I if we used 5e, the DMG doesn't offer much help. There are about 2 pages that tell you how to do skill rolls, and
Mm-hmm.
so I've basically written a bunch, both some on my blog and some in notebooks on how do you make these skill rolls meaningful, and it's very much making them move like, where based on how well you roll, that's how much success you get. And yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. I think there's something to be said for making uh, skill rolls exciting, and
Yeah. And
having
I
all
know
rolls mean something.
in Pathfinder, I know there's an investigator class. I don't
Right.
remember if they actually
Yeah.
do investigations per se, but like I know that but like there is at least a game in which an investigator exists as a class.
Yeah. In
Um,
in 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 Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, there is like an investigator background, I believe.
okay, cool. And I'm just thinking about a detective who can talk to ghosts, maybe, and
Right.
maybe it's Murder She Spoke.
Nice. Nice. Very
I don't
nice.
know. Yeah, this is more tempting than I think you expected it to be for me. Like
Okay.
I am not interested in this at all. I am very
Okay.
like I'm more torn than I thought I was going to be.
Okay. All right.
Luke is shouting. I mean, if Alison Arth, who I love dearly, knew that we were playing a Murder She Wrote, like this like an investigative game, uh she would just love it. She would die, which is not a
Nice.
reason why we have to do it, but it would make at least one person extremely happy. It's
The
also
the downside is that we'd be building a skill system from the ground up, which isn't that hard because we've got a limited number of skills in,
right.
and I think there is some, we could figure out what all that meant. The the hard part is that a large portion of the character sheet would be doing nothing for us,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be tough.
Right.
So
And it also means a large portion of the potential things that the game offers, abilities you get as you level, magic items, all these other things. There's tons of stuff that is the game is about combat, right? And
right,
so most of the things that are in the game, character abilities, magic, whatever you find, are going to aid are going to aid combat. And so it would be hard to, it would mean that there could be times like, oh, you went up in level and nothing really changed materially because all the things that improved are terribly germane. Unless we also are like, and it's a dangerous job and there's lots of fighting, which is totally like absolutely reasonable in the setting. But we could then be stuck in the situation of going, we're having the very long combat. Although maybe one player combat wouldn't be super long, wouldn't be as long at least. It'd
there
probably be,
are ways to make the combat better.
yeah.
Uh, uh, Luke, you say you've got a system suggestion. What is your what is your system suggestion that would be an equal amount of hacking, but would be all working? What I am curious. I am intrigued. Uh,
Yes.
uh,
Share with us your ideas
yes,
from the Wildwood.
yes. Uh,
All right.
I'm definitely intrigued. Yeah, I didn't think this was going to be I'm fascinated that this was something you were at all interested in. That's awesome.
I mean, it's a really cool pitch. Like if you had just said like Dungeons and fucking whatevers, I probably would have been like, yeah, I kind of, a little interested, but Use the
Oh
mechanics from
yeah.
Dogs in the Vineyard, but rewrite the specifics of Town Cycle to evoke Ravenloft and the Mists, modes of evil, contagion, rather than, gross Mormonism.
Huh.
Hmm.
Huh.
Hmm.
Damn you,
I've
Luke.
done I've done some amount of hacking Dogs in the Vineyard. We made a Jedi in the Vineyard game, which I know several people did. I think a lot of people had this idea of like Jedi running around, and then Sean Hayworth and Sean Hayworth did. I talked to him as he did it, but I saw what he was doing was the Sons of Anarchy. Your motorcycle gang drive
Right.
around
Right.
hack of dogs, and I've also played. Wilson Zorn did a corporate Dogs in the Vineyard where we were playing consultants who would come in to corporations and tell them how to run their companies better, and they of course didn't want to hear anything I had to say. So yeah, I've seen lots of. It's a pretty easy game to hack.
Okay.
You can chop off. You could chop the head off of Dogs in the Vineyard. Yeah, Werewolves in the Vineyard. Um, like you can cleave the game the setting off of the mechanics, and they are embedded. It's not like they're. But if you have an analogous kind of activity of like you've been empowered to go around and do this thing, which presumably an investigator might be, um, you yeah, it was really easy to do for Jedi. I'll say that.
Got it. Got it. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Uh, hmm.
Have you had a lot of experience with it? Have you?
I ran a bit. I've run. I don't know. Probably, more than 5, less than 10 sessions
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
of
yeah.
Dog in the Vineyard. I've played in a couple. Uh, Actually, I might be approaching double digits for Dogs in the Vineyard because I ran it as a con game a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on. I've probably run double digit sessions of Dogs, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. And
Yeah.
I could see how we could do that. Again, a bit of work, but
It has a nice. I mean, it's been years since I played it, but it has a nice advancement system
yeah,
in that you can pick to have effectively bad traits, right? Like you effectively um, you effectively like a D4 trait is kind of like a junk die, and so you can have like a trait that's like almost a detriment if if something bad happens, but then you can decide I want to make that D4 trait actually something I care about. I want to turn that sort of negative aspect of myself into a positive aspect and increase its die size later on. So I think I remember Vincent saying like you can have a character who just keeps getting beat up and keeps like taking the always on the outside, like never doesn't know how to fit in or something like that, and just get like tons of D4s in it, like make it like 3 or 4 or 44 or whatever, and then decide like I figured out how to survive on my own, and bump that up to D68, do whatever, and like
right.
there's some neat like things you can do in it. It it mechanically shows your character's growth, which I
Cool.
like. You
And
know,
I've also got. I don't have it in my in the Google Doc that I was reading from the Crown Investigative Guild, but I also have a kind of series of tables. I think it's a bunch of D6 tables for making new cases.
mm,
So it would be pretty easy for me to look at it and be like, okay, I've got a new case. Let's do it.
yeah.
And linking that to one of the domains. So
Luke pointed out, I think what mainly interests me in the model of that is that it isn't the forensic shit, but the skulking around, asking around places and taking and talking to people, and talking to people parts that New Orleans on.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, that's one area where I feel like dogs can kind of dogs is kind of all talking to people, right? Like there isn't any kind of contest you can have. Well, that's not true. You
right,
can have contests against inanimate objects. Anything can have a die pool, so you can have a contest with anybody. But it doesn't. It's hard for it to make sense for like an inanimate object, like a clue that I'm trying to find to escalate.
yeah,
But if the clue that you're trying to find is like I'm trying to go down these dark, dangerous streets of Ravenloft, and I'm trying to find this thing, and like the contest I'm trying to do is like to find this person, and it's like we're going against the dark, dangerous streets of Ravenloft, then absolutely they could escalate, right? Like
Right.
they
Right.
could turn to so. And then Alistair said, I put some minor work into an Agon hack of dogs. There's a lot to work with there. Just saying thank you, Alistair, because anybody who's hacking Agon makes me happy. Unless you're hacking first edition, in which case I'm also happy. It's also super cool. But
I
yeah,
didn't think that idea was going to catch. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is literally a throwaway because you mentioned D&D in your doc. And I was,
all right. Yeah. No, it's okay. So I would say our two big contenders
okay.
are Sorcerer Kings and Ghosts in the Dark. Very, very. I mean, those two are neck and neck.
Yeah.
And I think this is like the next spot.
Cool.
Number 3 is definitely
Cool.
this.
So the other thing we can do is we can say, let's do, let's do game A, and let's keep game B on deck for next, and let's keep game C. Like maybe, next year at on October 1st we start playing a creepy Ravenloft Dogs in the Vineyard game.
Yeah.
And because what I found, because I'm running Curse of Strahd right now on Thursdays, and what I found is everybody was super into it. Like we started playing late September, and it really helped. Like just playing during the creepy season when all the media is going there in the Northeast, and our leaves are changing, and the days are getting darker, and pumpkins are out, and it helped. It just helped. So,
yeah.
Which is not to say we can't play that game any time of the year, but yeah, I'm down for any of those. So I don't know, and I think we might have we might be able to parlay that Godbound idea into a group game.
Yeah. I think the Godbound idea as a larger game is also something we should consider. Whoa, such good stuff.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you liked the ideas. That's great.
Let's since we still have a little bit of time, I don't want to keep us too late. I'd like to probably wrap in the next 15-20 minutes or so like that, so we keep this at about 2 hours.
Yeah.
But Luke had asked earlier, where's Sean's pitch deck? Or Luke, they had asked about seeing mine, and now reminds us, thank you, Luke, about my pitch deck. So mine is a document, so it's not pretty, but I will show it and scan through it and give you kind of the sense of like what was in my mind. So is that cool with you, Judd, if I share this bit? Okay. So I started with like play styles that I'm really grokking. Characters that are part of something bigger, just being part of a community, just being not the outsiders who come in and trash things, but people who, you're affected by the same things that the people you're helping are affected by, and that you're part of them. Playing moral characters. One of the best parts of playing games with you, Luke. Also playing with you, Luke, as well, but playing against you, Judd, is that you have responded so well to me wanting to play characters that were driven by a moral compass and had a sense of internal integrity, and didn't necessarily always take the most strategic, sensible option.
Yeah.
And it's been really wonderful. And that hasn't always worked out for them. It's been bad for them sometimes, but it's been really wonderful to have that kind of play validated as seen as like, oh, this is a good way to play. And I was also thinking about the idea of like, it could be other drivers. It could be envy. It could be infatuation. It could be insecurity. Morality doesn't have to be the end all be all, but like, I don't know. I'd want to find a positive element of them. Like those sort of less healthy intentions can still also be really cool, and it could be some mashup of those. But I like the idea that there's the possibility to play characters that are, I don't know, care. I'd be okay with playing multiple PCs, though not necessarily at once. This could be like a roster of characters picked from
Mhm.
jobs, Project Perseus style, or it could be a game that bounces around. And this is kind of where, when you were talking about Ultraviolet, I was like, "Ooh, yeah, I like this idea of like you jamming for me and me jamming for you."
Yep.
I just wasn't as the setting. I couldn't really connect to for.
Yep.
And then character types I'm excited about. Characters who aren't in their 20s and good looking with no responsibilities. I am so sick of, maybe it's just because I've gotten old, but I'm just so sick of playing characters. I was playtesting a game the other night, and it was about Chinese diaspora in space. And I was like, I want to play a character who's just getting out of her second marriage, and the spaceship is owned by her ex-husband. It's hers, but he has the rights to it, and they're in a custody battle over the spaceship that they're flying around. And her
Oh,
kids from both of her kids have issues, and she has some health issues that aren't really serious anymore, but she had a cardiac arrest a long time ago, and now it's hard for her to get health coverage because pre-existing conditions. Like that's the character I want to play. I don't play the character who, and she's capable.
right.
She can work through that bureaucracy. She is not completely overwhelmed by it, but it is just like a constant like pressure on her of like all of these things, and there isn't clean ways out of it. And I loved playing that character because she was angry for good reasons to be angry, and she was also like responsible and cared about not making the situation worse all the time. And in most role playing, there's always that, like, you kind of got to be willing to break things. You got to have characters that are willing to take chances and have things go wrong. You don't want to play a risk averse character, I think, but I think you can at the same time play a character who is cognizant of the ramifications of their actions and still will do dangerous things, but like does so knowingly. Doesn't just kind of do it like, hey, we're on a beach holiday, right?
Right.
So, and characters who aren't defined by their martial prowess. Even if it is something they possess incidentally. So Alexei, the character I played in the last game, was a great duelist and all this stuff, but like that, we had a duel at the very beginning and a duel at the very end.
Yeah.
And we had 8 sessions in the middle with violence in being only very intermittent. And I like characters that are, yeah, not just defined by I'm devil with the blade. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're super cool characters who are like quick draws and all that stuff. But like, yeah,
I hear
setting
you.
ideas that I'm interested. Really hungry for Dustfall. I just love that world. I want to explore more. This could also be true
Same.
for D&D fantasy settings. But I gave you this like caveat. I was like, but I only want to play a fantasy setting if we've got like a thing, like a
Right.
strong touchstone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I've done a lot of um, Forgotten Realms via Burning Wheel, so like I know that I can take those settings and make something out of them. And I've done it with one-on-one games too. When I first got back to Ithaca, a friend of mine and I ran a game where he was a soldier in Cormyr, and it was really cool. So
yeah,
I know that I can take those settings and like find the situation in them and and do it. So I wasn't, yeah. If we were going to go that route, I wasn't worried about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Luke says Sean wants to play someone who feels lived in. Yes, I do. I want to play a person who feels lived in, and I also want to play a setting that feels lived in.
Yeah.
My my one of my favorite parts of the movie Alien and one of my favorite parts of the show The Expanse is all the busted shitty technology that's like always kind of half working.
Yeah.
And like there's this scene where these two guys are in like the engine room or something like this. This is an alien, and like water is just spraying out of stuff, and I'm like, I don't think that you should just be doing that. And they're just ignoring it. They're just like, whatever.
Right.
They're like fixing one thing is like something else broke because they can't fix it all. Because that stuff is just, it's going to happen. That's the life. Um, there's a story that Jared Sorensen told me about when he was developing inspectors that always like, I love. He said when he saw this interview with a guy who who worked in the sewers, and they had this problem that the rats in the sewers would climb up their pants and then nuzzle in their crotch because that was warm, and it was hard to get them out. And like, this sounds horrific, right? This sounds like terrifying. And so they're like, well, what did you do? And the guy's like, we started duct taping our boots to our pants so that the
Right.
rats couldn't get up them. And it was just not this like, oh no, we ran away or we exterminated the rats or we like took this drastic measure. It was just like, yeah, we just taped our pants legs closed so that, so the rats wouldn't climb up them anymore.
Well,
I just love
my
that, like, oh
my
yeah,
duct
it's
my duct tape.
busted.
Yeah, my duct tape came undone. I got a crotch rat. Oh damn it!
Yeah, exactly.
The paperwork on those things.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
All right, systems. Clearly, we bit really hard at a burning wheel, and I think we benefit from a system with mechanical depth. Along those lines, I'd consider. And here were the games that I was talking about.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
didn't.
it was interesting that you mentioned Ars Magica because that was a game that was like the game I ran in college.
Yeah.
For years and years, and I don't feel like a one-on-one game would play into any of their strengths. Although now that I think about it, I'm glad I didn't think of it because it would have been another pitch. There are red caps who are like the messengers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that could be a totally awesome. That would be like playing a red cap would be an awesome, Ars Magica game, and some of them were gifted and some of them aren't.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, that's I'm glad that I just thought of that now because I would totally be into playing like an Ars Magica second edition game. And the other thing is, having come from an Ars Magica background and having talked to Vincent and Meg on lots of long trips to Gen Con over the years, I know that a lot of Apocalypse World comes from their Ars Magica stuff, so their experiences. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think that could be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I also played second edition in middle school and high school, and I remember our it's not Coven, is it? What's the group of
Covenant?
Covenant. Thank you. I remember Covenant finding this like ancient table that was busted to hell, and it was some old sorcerer's table from the time of yore, and like our there was like the skeleton of a dragon that we were inside of, and it was super fucking middle school awesome, right? And this table, I think I always forget how it's pronounced, but like Weiss, is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
This table was like shattered, but it used to be like made up of crystallized Weiss of like all the different varieties. And so we had to like replace all of them to like reactivate it. And so we just spent so long trying to gather Weiss and like rebuild it. And then as we did, parts of it would like light up and we'd like get more of the history of the old Covenant. Because it was a former Covenant from ages ago that we were basically reclaiming. And so I remember.
I wonder if it sounds like the Broken Covenant of Calabase, which was a module. Yeah.
Oh yeah, could be. I didn't run it, so I don't. Although we did do it troop style, I did run some games. I just ran them, not particularly related to that, but the GM who was like really into the history of it, because that was fun. We would rotate GMs and rotate whether we're playing Grogs or mages or companions. And I remember there being like just so much work to put in to like try and fix that thing, which felt really cool as we were adding it. But now I look back and I'm just like, yeah, we were just fucking playing Pokemon with Whis, you know?
Right.
Right. But yeah, it's spelled VIS, but yes, yep. in the faux Latinate that you use when you're playing Ars Magica. Because C's are sounds. It's pronounced Weiss, I think. Yeah. So Luke, that was my my pitch, as it was.
Yeah, and when I read it, I was like, oh, we're going to be fine. Everything, all the idea. Like I can't imagine pitching an idea that like didn't cross over into a lot of those ideas and your concepts and.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think we've got a pretty good idea of what the other one wants out of a game.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. Cool stuff.
Yeah, very good stuff.
Do we want to? Do you have a thought? Like, is is Sorcerer Kings kind of where we're at?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like let's pin it down. I'm pretty. I keep thinking of different cool ideas for both Ghost in the Dark and Sorcerer Kings. I think Sorcerer Kings is a little more ready to go out of the gate, right?
Yeah,
Because it basically requires World of Dungeons, check, already done, and a list of cool stuff in the city and complications the city has, which
yeah,
you would want to write up.
yeah,
And I think that's the kind of list that you're excited about writing up, and like we could, and so I think that is is I think that one is like ready to go. Ghosts in the Dark, we would have to figure out at least a little bit, even if we don't have to build the whole thing, but we'd have to figure out at least a little bit of like what does turf look like and things like that. Because in the beginning, you don't start with any, so you don't really need to know. But
right,
we would have to think of like, but you should have a sense of the map at least to think of like what's important. And in my mind, I'm kind of channeling vigilantes a little bit here. You know, turf may also be like creating safe places, which might be either safe for
right,
my character's a ghost, but it also might be like safe for the people that I care about who are
yeah,
also affected by whatever happened, whatever killed me or whatever threatened me or other things, you know. And so, you know, in vigilantes, what you do is you kind of reclaim things that the bluecoats or in the institutions or other crews have taken, and you kind of so it's like instead of like terrified citizens, you have emboldened citizens, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
um, they're not yours. You don't get them as a commodity, but they improve the world around, and then there is still like some sort of benefit that you have implicit in that you live in a world that is now less shitty.
right,
You know, so so yeah, I don't, even though that would take more development, um, I don't think it would be something we had to make the whole thing off the bat.
right.
So because some of this onus would be on you about like prep and thoughts about that, like, and I know we're just about to wrap up, but like what are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
feeling more excited to like start making lists about and stuff like
yeah.
that?
I think right now I'm more excited about the Sorcerer Kings thing. It's
Yeah,
been a half written idea for a long time, and
yeah,
so it would be cool to dig into that
let's do it.
with the World of Dungeons thing, and and don't ever do this, anyone, like whoever is watching this, please don't do this thing that I'm about to show you that I did, which was just really dumb. But I made like one of the things that I love to do, because I've kind of been tinkering with the Affinity design suite for the better part of the pandemic, is is uh, is filling around with making the Twitter pics. And so, which one do I want? I
Man,
want
Canva is such a game changer. I have to say,
Canva's
it
a
is
big
the
deal. Yeah,
difference between MS Paint and beautiful Twitter cards that you
right.
make.
Uh, yeah, so I've got a Twitter card for us.
Oh my God. Expand that a little bit so we can see it and see
Let
the
me
detail.
see if I can do it without getting too close. Because
I think if
last
you
time I
can.
tried to expand it, I
Oh yeah. Oh, hold on. Enhance. Zoom. Continue. What do I
right.
see there? What is this post-it note? Twitch.
It
What
has
is this?
Emmett and Puppercat are
Emmett and
there.
Bumpercat. Judd, you knew all along.
I,
You
I
you you
I did
knew
not.
all
I did
along
not.
that's what we're gonna
I
play.
started making it as like just a fun. Uh, this will be fun, and then yeah, it just took on a life of its own, and I was just having so much fun with it and then I knew I wanted a post-it note, and I remembered how when my dad would take notes in his like little hand notebook near the phone, he'd always have a doodle in the corner. And so, in order for my own authenticity, I wanted a little doodle in the corner. And I found a cat and a dog, and then the rest was history. Emmett and Puppercat were immortalized into our Twitter thing.
Yep.
So when you see that pic go up, sometime in 2 weeks, you'll know that we're ready to dive into this strange city and try to make clean up some of the mess that the Sorcerer Kings left for us.
Yeah, yeah. I'm feeling like sanitation worker, firefighter,
Yeah,
post delivery, like post office delivery, like any of these, like physically active, like going out and about, kind of civic servant roles with a fantasy and also like not just a fantasy twist, but with the twist of like, even before the Sorcerer Kings left, these issues were problems. They got a lot worse when they left, but it was like there had to be, like, they had these portals to these other realms, and like people had to clean up those messes. Um, so
awesome.
yeah, I feel like there's a lot of I don't want to play a social worker
Right,
necessarily,
right,
but I feel like that would be another like cool. Okay, tell me, your building got eaten by the astral plane. So are people
right,
still alive? Yeah, they're
right.
still alive. They're just out of phase. All right, all right, all right. It's fine. We had this happen a few years back. Don't worry. Wait, give it a night. They might just phase back in at the next moon, when the moon comes back up. If they don't phase back in, we'll send somebody to take a look, right? Like, I could just see this as like, yeah, I know the city, the sun started going up on the other side,
Yeah,
but like, it's all right. We still have a full day of sunlight. We'll be okay.
yeah. And I think we're gonna have to like a little. We'll have to have a little bit of like off camera back and forth about just what we want in the fantasy world.
Yeah,
And I mean, I think like no monsters, only people is definitely a big one.
right.
Um,
Even if they are non-human, right?
right,
Like,
right.
right. Yeah,
But yeah, and do how D&D-ish do we want to get with that? And
right.
we'll play with it. We'll see.
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah.
cool.
That sounds great. I'm excited. Do you want to do character development? Well, we'll talk in between. We'll figure out
Yeah,
whether we're going to do character creation. I'm happy to do it. Like, I'm happy to set those things in advance, but do the actual pick lists and
cool.
character gen and all that stuff on screen. I mean, character creation in World Dungeons is so fast anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds awesome.
love it, love it. Well, thank you everybody who's hung out with us. This was a lot of fun.
That was really fun.
And yeah, and I hope other people enjoyed us talking about the silly games we want to play, and or the not silly games we want to play, the serious games we want to play. But this is great. I'm Sean Nittner. You know where to find me. Right now, the thing that I would love folks to look at, if they're not already, is check out the Advanced Lovers and Lesbians Kickstarter. We have it going. We're calling it a quick starter because it is only 15 days and it has no stretch goals, and it is just to take the stretch goals that came from Thirsty Sword Lesbians and put them and print them in a book. So we have 272 pages of amazing settings, adventures, playbooks. It's fantastic. It's more content than the original book, and
Yeah.
it's just
One of one of
gorgeous.
one of them was written by my friend Ash, and I knew that my another friend Jim we were both involved in the Kickstarter. Not involved. We bought it. We paid into it, and so the original Thirsty Sword Lesbians Kickstarter. So we got the PDF, and I said to him, I said to Jim, I think my friend Ash wrote one that's very Gideon of the Ninth. And Jim read it and said, it's not just Gideon the Ninth, it's Gideon the Ninth versus She-Ra. And I was like, what? So if Gideon the Ninth versus She-Ra is your cup of tea, then Advanced Lovers Lesbians might be your thing. I want to design a Thirsty Sword Lesbians hack just so I can have Powered by Lesbians on my book. I just think that
Yep, you
is
should do it.
the most awesome
Well,
thing ever.
I kind of got into the book on accident because I was traveling with my wife, and this was like still in COVID times, and so we were traveling, but like not seeing anybody. We were on a road trip, and it was still very weird. And so we spent a lot of time inside, like not like in a hotel room, not going out anywhere. But we just needed to get out. And I had just watched Queen's Gambit on Netflix, which I really loved. And I was like, oh my God, this is just screaming they're still lesbians. So I was like, 1969, the world's changing, and the biggest chess tournaments are happening, and everybody lives and breathes and eats and sleeps chess. Like that's everybody. Chess is everybody, and you're playing these chess players who are like absolute superstars. And chess is how everything is solved all the time. And everybody, like the shopkeeper plays chess, the president plays chess. Chess is life in miniature. And I just was just futzing around. It was just, and then I found the art director of There's Sir Lesbians Trivia Fox. Her partner June Lalonde, or their partner June Lalonde, uh, was a super big chess fan, and so June was like, "Oh, I'm into that," and so then we started making it together, and I was like, "This is great! I'm super excited about it." And that was it's just gonna be totally like just a fun thing.
Yeah.
I was not gonna publish it. It's a straight white dude. I was like, "This is not, this is just my like fun project. It's fine." And then the book had a printing error, and we had to reship like hundreds of copies of this book because there's a printing error. And so we were trying to figure out like what could we do as like a little like, sorry,
right,
your book needed to be like, it's not so bad. It's just every 32 pages there was a faded spot. So a lot of folks just left it. They didn't care. But we wanted to have a little like, sorry. And so we didn't want to say, we had already promised them all the stretch goals. So we're like, well, what could we give them? I'm like, well, we could give them mine. I mean, it's fine. It's good. And so it turned into the like, well, yeah, we'll give them that as like a free setting, an extra free setting. And then it was like, well, we should probably put art in it. And then like, well, if we're going to put art in it, we probably should put it in the book. And I'm just like, oh no, my little like weekend project of a chess setting in the 60s turned into a contribution. So I'm delighted to be one of the sort of accidental contributors, but
yeah, awesome.
It was very cool.
That's very cool. I would also like to say for the record before we go out that pitches need not be this. If that looked complicated, they need not be that complicated. They need not be that developed. You can just start playing, get your friends to make characters, ask your friends questions about the characters, tell them that the sun is dead and that they've got to do something or otherwise the world's going to go kaput, and just start playing. Like this need not be a complicated thing. This can just be like, make characters because the sun just died.
Right.
Someone killed the sun god. You need to do something. Your characters need to do something today. So it just doesn't have to be complicated, or, whatever it is, bandits are attacking the village if you want to go that route. But it just doesn't have to be complicated. You definitely don't need a PowerPoint. I've never done that before. And so, yeah, just don't think that this is the only way to do it. This was the way we did it because this was the way it worked out. And here we are. So anyway. Cool.
100%. How about you, Judd? What's going on in your life? Where can people find you?
You can find me at Githyanki Diaspora, is my blog. Daydreaming About Dragons is my podcast, and it's been a productive couple of weeks. If you want to see one way that I would start a game, there is a starless, it's called a quick and embedded starless elf. And it's just like a quick, here, make a character real fast and go. And you're embedded in the Underdark mess. And you can see how I would start things if I was going to do that type of campaign, and how I'd like to just get things started real fast. So like it'll give you an idea of one way to get a game started. And so, the blog and the podcast are the main two things right now.
Super metal. That sounds great. Cool. Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, folks.
We'll see you later. I'm going to leave this up for a hot second.
Yup.
Mm-hmm.